I'm Andy Schmuckler, and I want to look into I think, really profound psychological question of how is it that the good people that one can encounter in the conservative American world can embrace something that's the opposite of the goodness that they say that they espouse, and that in other parts of their uh, life than the political realm, uh, they seem to live by. I did hundreds of hours of radio conversations with conservatives in the Shenandoah Valley back in the 1990s. And I feel convinced that they were deeply sincere, a lot of the people I talk with, in their Christian values, in their patriotic reverence for the Constitution and our founding fathers and all that, Fourth of July kind of thing, and in the importance of good character. So it's kind of amazing to see that these people, in their politics, are supporting something which is just the opposite of Christian values, that's assaulting the Constitution that they used to revere, and that is led by a man whose character is more defective than any human being that I've ever studied, and I've studied some doozies. Donald Trump has every characterological defect that matters. I don't think I'm overstating it. Greed, hatred, lust, the whole panoply. He's got it all. He's a cheat, selfish, and yet he commands a following, a fervent following. And I think it overlaps some with the good people that you encounter in a place like the Shenandoah Valley, watching how they behave in their churches and in their communities. The kind of person who might, when there's a hurricane in Louisiana, might drive down with lumber to help people rebuild. People who are involved in a lot of philanthropic, charitable, volunteer kinds of things, contributing to their communities. And a lot of times people who are very good neighbors. The goodness can be seen there. So how is it that the same person who sincerely feels all these things then in the political realm align themselves with something that's just the opposite? Today's Republican Party. Character, the Constitution, and the rule of law, and the basic values of our founders, Declaration of Independence, and the Christian values. Now, some parts of Christian America have gotten to the point where people are saying that Jesus is weak, but a lot of people are still thinking that they are good Christians, and yet they support a political party whose conduct continually violates what Jesus taught. So over the years, I've tried to understand this in any way that I could. I've also put out in my op-eds that have been weekly, but once in a while, with some frequency, calling people's attention to the contrast between the things that they say they value and how what they're supporting politically is just the opposite. I don't know that if it had any impact for me to keep pointing that out. I mean, it's just so easy to show, but people don't have to read something. Or if they read it, they can just tell themselves it's a bunch of liberal baloney. I don't know what happens with it out there. We've come to believe more in the futility of it than in the impact that I was seeking to have. But I've tried to understand what happens psychologically. And one of the efforts that I've tried to articulate was the idea of modules. There was the idea would be that in one situation, one would have one set of cognitive, emotional, whatever's, you know, at some uh, at some level, there being an interchangeable aspect, just like we are. Well, a lot of people are not the same in every relationship. So we all, at just one degree or another, we all have these sort of different roles that we play as a parent, as a child, as an older sibling, as a younger sibling, as a friend, as a spouse. It's not. Uh, I gather that a lot of people can vary a fair amount in those kinds of roles. And so we seem to have some capacity to have different sets of rules that I don't know how to conceptualize what might happen in the brain, but maybe there are certain patterns that go together in some fashion, uh, just like some light displays go from this one to that one and back to this one and that one. Maybe something like that happens neurologically. So I had the idea of there being some kind of a module, and I even sort of pictured it as being something you plug in, like electronics on a B-51. It doesn't explain much of what it is that's going on, but I don't know things at that level. I do know that it sort of corresponds a little bit to some social psychology that's got to do with, like there's a book called by Goffman called Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. I think it's got plenty there about how you could have different roles. It doesn't explain it exactly, but uh, can there be a physiological almost like shift of components? But so that the role you play in one place is not the same thing as the role you play in another, and so you can have somebody getting trained in a sense by people like Rush Limbaugh, Newt Gingrich, into a role that when they go into the political realm, they don't think about do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They think in a much more fascistic way. Well, does that happen? And I have a most recent thought that we know that something like that happens, besides the stuff about presentation of self in everyday life, where we play different roles with different situations, systems, individuals. And that is, and I don't know if this works psychologically or not, but it seems to me to demonstrate that something of an interchangeable set of rules and modules, and who knows what, is possible in terms of multiple personality. I think it's called, what's it called? Disunited identity disorder or something like that. Um, and it's got to do with the fact that there's some people who actually can essentially change from one person to another. And it's usually been triggered by severe trauma, so that the person ends up the word dissociative is the person actually can be two different identities that have two different ways of speaking or dressing or valuing or whatever. And sometimes they know about the others and sometimes they don't. But these are documented things that can happen, which show that whatever else the brain and personality might be, there is a capacity in people to be not integrated and to be different selves. And what's happening with the good people in the Shenandoah Valley that have embraced a force that I'm willing to call evil is not at the depth and level of having completely different selves, like with different names and all that. But if that can happen, I think that suggests that something lesser could happen, that you might be able to train people to have one set of values in their politics and an opposite set of values in all the other roles they play in life. I don't pretend that, I've solved the psychological problem, but I think that maybe this idea of the multiples shows that there's a possibility of like different kinds of programs kicking in depending on what switch gets switched, uh, which depends on situations. I don't think it's like brainwashing, like in the Manchurian Candidate or something like that, the original Frank Sinatra. I don't think it's like that. But there is some kind of way, apparently, that one can divide oneself into different identities in a more extreme situation, and into different sets of values with giving the same name, remembering having the same, not being split into discrete pieces, but within a general identity, having completely different modes. For what it's worth. Thanks. My better human story lays out as best I can, after a life's work, a way of understanding the situation we're in. As Americans, but more fundamentally still, as members of the species that took the unprecedented step of creating a civilization, extricating itself from the niche in which it evolved biologically. There's stuff to be said about taking that step. Thanks. A betterhumanstory.org.